Hey up everybody, and welcome back to the Audi Cycling YouTube channel, where today we're going to be taking a look at Milano Sanremo, the first monument of the year. For me, it's one of the most exciting hours of racing that you're guaranteed to have in the cycling season. I love this race. I think it's fantastic. I love the build-up from, about the Capo Mele. I really love that. I mean, obviously this is the route profile. Jumping straight into it, we obviously have a very flat parcours. We are 289 kilometers. We have the Passo del Ticino. Obviously by this point you're going to have the breakaway. I think it's about this point here. Pretty much once they've got over the Passo del Ticino, that'll be the 50% point of the race distance, and that'll be the first breakaway point. And then you get them at 50 kilometers to go, so that's pretty much at the Capo Chievo, and then you have them again at 20 kilometers to go, so that's pretty much at the top of the crest of the Cipressa, which is going to be pretty hard to do because UE Team Emirates are going to pretty much smash that for Pogacar. So this is pretty much the route. We all kind of understand it. Obviously looking at the climb details, I realise this is not overly helpful because it fills more than the screen. But here's the Cipressa, got 5.6 kilometers at 4.1%. The steeper part is in the first kind of like 2/3, and then we go on to the Poggio de Sanremo. Again, steeper at the start on average, but the steepest bit is 8% in the last sort of kilometre or so. That's where we saw Pogacar attacking last year, and obviously he returns. He hasn't won this race before. He's 34 credits. Is Pogacar worth it? I think Pogacar is the safe pick. Is he going to be the best value for money person? Probably not. I think that overall Pogacar will likely be worth it. The likelihood, if I was to put a percentage number on it, which I haven't calculated, but if I were to, I'd say that pretty much 80% of the time Pogacar's worth it. Because even if he is going to attack, he's going to attack, you're going to have a more comfortable viewing experience now that Pogacar's on your team, rather than hoping that some sprinter is going to hold on for dear life. Pogacar is going to attack. He's going to try and create a bit of a split, and I think that he is a really safe option. And even if he is caught like he was last year, he still sprinted to third place. And worst case, he'll probably sprint to a top 5. Yes, he might get beaten by people who are a little bit cheaper, but at the end of the day, Pogacar is usually worth it. And like I said, he might get beaten by some people cheaper than him, but you have to be quite, it's got to be very nailed. You have to really get your team pretty well dialed in. So I feel Pogacar's just a nice safe one if you don't want to worry about things too much. Van der Poel is an interesting one. Since Philipsen crashed in the Noorderkost the other day, I'd say that Van der Poel is a better pick now than he was previously, because I think this race is now pretty much his for the taking. Instead of Philipsen last year, they had both of those cards to play. I think that this time round, with Philipsen crashing, and it's a little bit questionable as to whether he's going to be starting, or even if he does, how is he going to be feeling. I think that Van der Poel will have a more free card to attack with Pogacar and work with him to the finish, rather than last year where Van der Poel, once they got off the base of the Poggio, his role was to work for Philipsen. So I think that Van der Poel is also a very good choice, and picking Pogacar and Van der Poel is a nice safe strategy. Philipsen I would be avoiding just because of that crash. Pedersen was so good in Paris-Nice, he has to be in the fray here, in my opinion. Thing is, if he doesn't make the move, let's say that the move is going to be Pogacar and Van der Poel go off of the front of the Poggio, Pedersen needs to go with that. Otherwise, he will likely be working for Milan, I would say, because I think that Milan's in good enough form to make it over the Poggio, a bit like Philipsen did last year. So I think that Pedersen's in a very weird scenario, but if he makes that front group with Van der Poel and Pogacar, my imaginary scenario, then he would probably beat both of those guys in a sprint, because he beat Van der Poel in the VELOGAMES sprint last year. And I'd say that he'd probably beat Pogacar in a sprint. I'd be quite surprised if he didn't. Although, to be fair, Pogacar did beat him in the Sanremo sprint last year, so who knows? But I'd say that Pedersen looks in better form this year based upon that Paris-Nice than he did last year. Milan is also a very good pick. A little bit riskier for sure. He did also crash in Tirreno, where he was pretty much fine by the end of it. He won a couple of stages there. He's obviously in very good form as well. So I think there's no problems with Milan, although as a sprinter you're very much reliant on the race coming back together, and I think that with Van der Poel not being on a Philipsen marking, like on a Philipsen kind of, helping duty like he was last year, because the only reason that whole group stayed together last year was pretty much because of Van der Poel. If Van der Poel's attacking with Pogacar, Lidl Trek are going to have to go all in on Milan, which means that you're risking it either way if you're picking Pedersen or Milan. Pidcock, again, very tricky scenario. He needs to make that front group. He needs to be attacking and holding the wheel of Van der Poel and Pogacar. Can he do that? Maybe not, but he could make up the distance on the descent for sure. He did that last year, if I remember correctly. He bridged across to Pogacar and Van der Poel. He closed a few seconds gap there. So I think Pidcock's a decent choice. Honestly, he was pretty good in Tirreno, and he's looking pretty good at Q36.5. For 22 credit riders, I think that Ganna is a good one because he was looking so good in Tirreno Adriatico, super strong. He must be in good form because you don't put 20 odd seconds into your competition over a 10-kilometer time trial if you're in bad form, and he is pretty much the protected leader for the Ineos Grenadiers. So Ganna's good. Coy, can he do what Philipsen did last year? I mean, he possibly could, but he'd probably be I wouldn't say that he's faster than Milan, so you'd probably be better off trying to get 2 credits and put Milan on your team instead than Coy, would be my opinion on it. But I still think that Coy could certainly be a bit of a not a red herring, but he could be like the fly in the ointment. He could really infiltrate that sprinting group and get a surprising result, and I don't think many people will be picking him, so he's a good differential for sure. Matthews, of course, was on the podium last year. He's, endemically good at this race, but he hasn't shown the best form this year, which certainly puts me off a little bit. That's my only concern. Usually he's a very safe one. Mohoric, very similarly, hasn't even raced in the last couple of weeks. I'm not really sure why. I'm not sure if it's illness or a crash or whatever, but usually he's absolute dynamite on that descent. So I don't want to say that Mohoric might have won it last year if it wasn't for Van der Poel bringing it back together. So Mohoric you can pretty much always rely upon attacking on the descent, and I pretty think that him, Pidcock and Van der Poel will be certainly looking to stretch their advantage on the Poggio descent. Van Hills possibly. I don't think Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe outside of Adlia really have that big option in this race, so I'd say that Van Hills is pretty good. Gregoire possibly. Groves, I mean, if Philipsen isn't feeling it, maybe Groves could be a decent shout. You don't know. That would be a really brave soul to go with Groves, but that could be a huge differential if you're looking for that. Stuyven has obviously won this race in the past, but I think he'll be working for Milan or Pedersen realistically. Corbin Strong, again, fits the bill of somebody who should be doing well in this race, but hasn't had the results recently to really give me loads of confidence over some other riders around him. For 18 credit riders, you got I wouldn't really say any of these are that great. I mean, Narvaez will be working for Poggi, Degenkolb, Ciccone. I'm not really sure why Ciccone is here. I don't think it's a race that massively suits him, but hey ho, what do I know? Abrahamsen, Ulissi, Vermeersch. I don't think the 18s are that great for this race, to be honest with you. For 16 credits, I like Adlia. For sure, he's been in great form. Him and Van Hills is a good little duo. I think that Adlia could certainly snag a top 10. 16 credits, that's pretty good. Magnus Cort, another one that you certainly can't write off nowadays, so I think that he's one who should be trying to get into a top 15. Narsen, Decathlon don't have that big leader in this race, so I think that Narsen could be good. Piffy, I suppose Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe do also have. I kind of forgot about him, but he has been just a bit off the radar recently, so I don't know what to make of that. I would say that Adria for me would be a safer pick than Piffy because he's just shown better form recently. The other ones I wouldn't be going with. 14 credit riders, Albanese, Laurence possibly for Ineos. Maybe he could be up there with Ganna. Ben Turner, Fred Wright, Vermarker. They're not really tickling my fancy, to be honest, these 14 credit riders. If you absolutely wanted one, I would say Fred Wright, just because I suppose Mohoric hasn't looked that great. Maybe Fred Wright could be a good one, or Laurence, probably one of those two. The 12 credit riders, I like Askey. He has been in some fantastic form recently, and I think that Askey, given that Groupama's best chance other than him would be Gregoire, who, this is a race which is really suited towards people that, I'd honestly say, more classic style people than punchers. Like, not really the, more like rouleur, like big guys, rather than little kind of climbers stroke punchers. So I'd say that Askey might be a better choice for Groupama, and at 12 credits that's really good value for money. Canal, I think he's definitely been in the top like 20 to 30th in this race in the past. Fiorelli, very similarly, could be a strong one for a top 20. Schmid actually could be quite good because, if you're not too confident in Michael Matthews, possibly Mauro Schmid, because he came second in a stage in Paris-Nice. He won the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race this year. I think that Schmid is a really interesting one to be considering as well. So I'd say, Schmid or Askey for the 12 credit riders. And I think those are quite good value options, honestly. The 10 credit riders, I'm not a big fan of many of these apart from Rick Ploymers, because he was very good in Tirreno Adriatico. He was climbing pretty well. That long stage, which is like 240 kilometres, the one which Andrea van der Laan won, he was 4th place. I honestly think he could have won that if he launched earlier. The fact that he made that, he was competitive in the finale of such a long stage, which was really tough, I think is indicative that Ploymers is in fantastic form for this race. The 8 credit riders, again, not too many options, but Meyerhofer, Maddis Michels as well could be decent. I swear Sparagli has come top 20 in this race in the past as well. Alois, Vito Breit, they're okay, but they're not the greatest choices in my opinion. The 6 credit riders, you've got Banexia. You might have guys to go in the breakaway, which honestly isn't that bad of a shout at 6 credits. I did that last year. Sean Flynn could be decent. Raul Garcia Piana has been in great form recently too. I think he could get a top 30. I think other than them, there's not too much to be going at. You might go with Rob Stannard because, like I mentioned, perhaps Mohoric isn't feeling too great. Maybe Rob Stannard could do something. And other than them, Tarozzi, if he doesn't get in the breakaway, then I don't know who will, because Tarozzi has been in the break in so many races this year, like in the UE Tour and consistently in Tirreno Adriatico. So I think Tarozzi is almost a guarantee to get in the break. So if he makes it to that 20 kilometres to go at the top of the Cipressa, then he will get 180 points, which is pretty good, all things considered, for a 6 credit rider. Tullet is also a good choice. Vismalisa bike with only really Olav Koy. Tullet, second the other day at Milano Torino, obviously in good form. I think he's also a very safe one. So remember, 4 credit riders, you've got Asparin for assist points on Pidcock. Lotto, I think, should be sending somebody in the breakaway, so Drisners, Giddings, or Weisstoffer. Weisstoffer seems to get in the breakaway fairly consistently, so I quite like him a bit more than the other 2. I would say that Guatucci, he's been in good form in the Tour of Taiwan recently, I want to say. So I think that he should be getting in the breakaway. And then just pretty much any of the pro-continental teams. So, Shudaru Kellerman, although they might have higher aspirations, so maybe not. They might be wanting all their riders around their leaders. Bjorn Kort could be also a decent one. Nencini, the guys from Bardiani as well. UnoX, I think they could go into a break, but I think they might trust Magnus Kort. So I'd probably say guys from Lotto, Bardiani, or Team Solution Tech, Vinny Fantini would be the best ones. Or if you're thinking that Pidcock will do well, then go with Asparin. This is my team at the moment. I quite like it. Van der Poel, Pedersen, Pidcock, Ploymers, Weissloffer, and Quatucci, just because I think they're going to get in the break. I think that Ploymers was just super good. I think that he could be a top 15. But I might go with, say, a a 6 credit rider here instead. So, Pedersen is a weird one because I need him to get in that front group. That's really what I'm expecting him. I'm expecting him to be able to follow Pogacar and Van der Poel pretty much to form a 3-up group of which Pedersen and Van der Poel finish first and second, and Pidcock maybe is in that group as well, or bridges to it on the descent, and maybe it's a group of 4. Maybe Pidcock finishes in 4th place and Pogacar finishes 3rd, something like that, and then Ploymers maybe is in the group behind and he sprints for a top 10 to top 15. That's sort of my reasoning here. I might also not go with Ploymers and go with a 6 credit rider. Honestly, I might just go with Tarozzi. And then, can I try and get Pogacar in here? I'm going to have to put in a 20 credit rider. Maybe I go even further down and go with Adlia. Maybe I can then, put those onto Tarozzi and get Ploymers back in. Maybe I've got to just, copium sort of levels of enthusiasm for Ploymers, thinking that he's going to do really well. So if you wanted the 2 big favourites in there, then you could certainly do something a bit more like this. You could also get, say, Ganna in here and then not go with Ploymers and just go with another 4 credit rider. You could go with something like that as well. It's really tricky as Sanremo actually to try and get absolutely right, but the advantage is that there aren't going to be that many breakaway points, so you're pretty much just looking at the absolute stage points, if that makes sense. So when you look at the scoring system, you're getting like 600, 540, blah, 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 blah. But, fighting, this is why I'm thinking that Ploymers could be all right, because if even getting down to 20th place is 132 points, that's still pretty good. Obviously, you want to be focusing all the way up here as best you can, but, somebody like Tarozzi, like I said, if he gets to the 3rd breakaway point, he gets 180 points, which is the equivalent of finishing 16th, so that's pretty good. So, could Tullet finish higher as a 6 credit rider than 16th? Maybe he could, but I'd say that Tarozzi might be safer. So there's a lot to be considering here. So let me know in the comment section who you're thinking of putting onto your teams. What sort of scenario are you expecting to pan out that's going to enable your team to do really well? And all there's left to say is to stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video. Salut!